In this presentation, we will continue on with our comprehensive problem, this time taking a look at the direct materials cost variance. So we're going to look at the cost variance a few different ways. We'll do our kind of more of a pictorial type of calculation here. We'll recalculate the total variance, and then we'll take a look at more of a kind of a shorthand formula type of method to get to the same results. So let's take a look first at more of our pictorial type of method. Note what we have here. We've got the actual sales, and we typically compare that to the standard. That's going to be the difference on our budget versus actual. So if we looked at just basically a budget, and we'd say, hey, this is what actually happened versus what we planned to happen, and that would give us our difference or change, our variance for the direct materials. But we need to break those out, however, between the two components, the direct materials price variance, the direct materials quantity variance. So what we want to do then is find a format so that we can get to that total variance, but break it out into its two components. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the actual sales, and I'm going to put this down with AQ using our abbreviation, multiply times the actual price. That'll give us our actual sales. And then we're going to take our standard costs, kind of our budgeted items over here. That's going to be the standard quantity, SQ, times the standard price, SP. So if the difference between these two, once we do these calculations, would be our total variance. Now, we're also going to have our mid calculation. This is going to be we'll call the flexible budget calculation. That's going to be the AQ, or actual quantity times the standard price. So actual quantity times the standard price. We will compare these two out, and that'll break out our direct materials price variance and our direct quantity price variance, the two components that break up and make up the total variance. So first we need the AQ, or the actual quantity. To get that, we're going to put our cursor in A75 and just say equals, and we're going to scroll up, and we're looking for the materials, and we want the actual information, the actual quantity in our data. So if we're going to scroll up to the actual costs starting in line 34, we're looking for the materials. We want the quantity, not the price. This is in pounds, 45,500. So that's going to be the actual amount. We're going to compare that to the actual price, or multiply times the actual price, equals. And if we scroll up and we go to the actual price, so here's our actual numbers, 5.5 per unit. So there's our information. If we multiply that out, this equals in B74 equals the A73 times the C73, or 45,500 times 5.10, gives us the 232.50. Okay, so then we can compare that to the standards. So now we want the standard quantity and the standard price. Now the standard quantity is a little bit tricky, so let's go up top and look at our standard information. Here's our standard information for our materials. We had the 3 pounds and the cost at 5. So this would be for 1 unit. We would need 3 pounds for a unit. Now our total capacity is 20,000, but our standard assumption is that we're at the 75% of capacity. So in other words, if we took the calculator, we had 20,000 units times 0.75, which is 15,000 units. Each one of those units takes 3 pounds of materials times 3. So that's going to give us our 45,000 on the standard. So we're going to go back down and do that calculation down here. We're going to say, all right, this in cell I73 equals, scrolling back up top, we're picking up the 3 pounds per unit times the capacity at 20,000 times 75. In other words, here's our formula, B4 times E17 times E16. We don't need brackets because it's all multiplication, so it won't matter which order it is. But if you take the 75 times the 20, 15,000, and then multiply times the 3, because it takes 15,000 times 3 units per 3 pounds per unit. That's our 45,000. Now the standard price is straightforward. That's going to be equal to the standard price that's been given up top, which is $5 per pound. And we should see some similarities here. This number and this number we would hope would be somewhat similar. This number and this number we would hope would be somewhat similar. If we multiply this out, then we've got the 45,000 times the 5. Why would they be somewhat similar? Because this is what we budgeted to happen and this is what actually happened. If you see a huge difference between the two, either our budget is way off, our standards are way off, or we picked up the wrong number. And then we're going to have our adjustment. So the difference, this total difference then, is our total variance. If we took this number minus that number, that's our total variance. And now we're going to break this out between the direct materials price variance and quantity variance. We're going to do that by taking the actual quantity times the standard price. So actual quantity, I'm just going to say equals, we already got that here. And then the standard price is over here. I'm just going to say this equals the standard price. And then let's multiply that out. So we're going to say this equals the actual quantity times the standard price. Okay, and then we're going to take the differences, basically, and oftentimes they will report this as a positive number no matter what. So I'm going to say this equals the higher number, which is the 232.50 minus the 227.500. Now, it could be a little bit tricky to kind of think about, is this good or bad? Is this favorable or unfavorable? And note the difference between the two. Like what we're concentrating on right here is the fact that the difference in the calculation is the actual price versus the standard price. So the thing that we're considering here is the direct materials price variance. And this is the actual price we paid, which is 10 cents more than what we thought. And therefore, obviously that's not good. We paid more than we thought we should, in essence, per unit. So this is going to be an unfavorable, expressed with a U, unfavorable difference. And then we're going to go over to this side. So we'll go to this side, and we're going to say this equals, I'm just going to say the larger number, the 227.5 minus the 225,000. And we've got the 2,500. So again, we consider is this good or bad? Because we're looking at the direct materials quantity variance. And again, you could kind of see that because, of course, what's being the same in these two calculations? The standard price is the same. So we got the standard price. The thing that changes, standard quantity. The quantity is what's different, and the actual quantity. The actual quantity, of course, is higher than the standard. In other words, what actually happened is greater than kind of what we budgeted. That's not good. So therefore, this difference is going to be unfavorable. Okay, so there's going to be our two differences, and if we were to add them up then, that would be our total variance. So we'll take the 4550 plus the 2500, and that'll give us the 7,050, the total variance. If we took the difference here, the 232,050 actual minus the 225,000 minus this item, that also gives us our 7,050. So this is breaking out the total difference by our two components. Those components being the direct materials price variance, which we'll put here, direct materials price variance. And I'm going to say that equals this item, because that's where there's a difference in the price in our calculation, and it's going to be unfavorable. And then there's a direct materials quantity variance, which is going to be equal to this item. And once again, that's going to be unfavorable. And that's going to give us our total direct materials variance. So our total direct materials variance then, if we were to sum these up, equals the sum of these items. That will be unfavorable as well. Now we can just show this a couple different ways. If we took a look at the total calculation of the total cost variance, we can consider that into its components. We can say, okay, the total variance, just to see it in a formulaic way, the actual cost will be the actual units. So I'm going to say, okay, the actual units, if we scroll back up, we're going to basically recalculate this looking at the actual units given here in our actual costs in B35. That's our actual units, and we're going to take that and compare it to, multiply it times the cost per unit. The cost per unit, if we scroll back up to our data, is going to be the 510. And then, of course, if we multiply that out, we're going to say this is the actual number of units times the cost per unit. And that gives us our total actual cost at the 232.50. And then we want to take a look at our kind of our budgeted or standard costs. So we'll take a look at our standard cost, and we'll take a look at these standard units. If we scroll back up, I'm going to say equals, and I'll scroll back up. Now again, the standard units is a little tricky because we know that we have this many direct materials per unit times the capacity level, 75% of the 20,000, 15,000. So in other words, times the 20,000 times the 75,000, or 15,000, 75% times 25,000 times 3 units is going to give us our 45,000. And then we're going to take that times the standard price, kind of like the budgeted price. That's going to equal, if we scroll back up, the standard price up top, which was the 5. And then if we multiply that out, we're going to say this equals the 45,000 times 5. And that'll give us the 225,000. And then our direct materials cost variance then would total out to be the difference here. So the difference being the 232.50 minus the 225,000. That's the 7,050. Again, that's our total variance. Total variance here that we broke out between the direct materials price variance and the quantity variance. The total variance that we saw between this and this. Again, that we broke out between these two items, the direct materials price and the direct materials quantity. Okay, so now we'll do this with basically a formula type of format. And this is going to be kind of the quickest way to do it, but it's also the way that's a little bit most confusing to see sometimes. So if we want to calculate the price variance with a formula, what the thing we want to change then is the actual price versus the standard price. So you're going to say, okay, it's the actual price minus the standard price, and then you got to multiply times the quantity, and you got to say, well, which quantity do I use? And that's usually the confusing part that you got to kind of memorize or just basically know, and that's going to be the actual quantity. So we're going to say, okay, the price variance is the difference between the prices times the actual quantity. So let's put that into a formula. We're going to say, okay, so the actual quantity, if we have up top, the actual quantity is the 45,000 that we calculated here, times, I'm just going to put an X, times the actual price, which we said was the 5 minus the standard price, which is going to be the 5. Oh, I should say minus equals the standard price, which is 5. So I'm sorry, the actual price is 510 here. The standard price is 5. So I didn't put the brackets here, but notice we're doing the subtraction first. So we need to do the subtraction first. We should probably put brackets around these to make it more clear for us. We're going to say this is what we do first. So now we're going to bring this down. I'm just going to say that equals the same number times, and then subtract this out. This equals this number minus this number. We're just doing algebra now, which is a little bit easier actually to do maybe paper and pencil. This is one thing that might be easier to do with a paper and pencil, but we'll break this out. Pretty small formula here. And then we're going to say this equals the 45.5 times the 10 cents, and there's the 4,550. And that, of course, matches the 4,550 here, and that's going to be unfavorable. So that's going to be our quickest way to do it. It's probably easier to see it pictorially this way, but this formula, of course, is going to be the quickest way to get there. And then we can do the same thing for the quantity variance. Now, of course, we're going to change the difference in quantity, actual quantity minus the standard quantity, and then multiply times some price. And we have to take the standard price. This is usually, again, the confusing part, because you're going to say, well, should it be standard price or actual price that we multiply by? It's going to be the standard price. Okay, so now we're going to take the actual quantity. So actual quantity, once again, up top, the 45.5. And then we're going to say minus, and then the standard quantity. So the standard quantity up top is this item, 45,000. And again, we should probably bracket these two items, so maybe that'll make our algebra look a little easier. And then the standard price. So the standard price we said was the $5. Standard price. Now we'll do the subtraction. So this equals the 45.5 minus the 45,000, and this is going to be times 5, and then we're going to just multiply that out. This equals the 500 times the $5, or 2,500, and that's going to be unfavorable. And of course, that 2,500 is the same number we came to here. And now we're going to go ahead and add that up, and that equals the 4,550 plus the 2,500, and that is unfavorable. So this would be the, kind of the quickest way to get there. We've seen it pictorially. We see it then broken out here, and then the total variance broken out, and then in terms of the formulaic functions of it.